Hello, my name is Tedora, and I'm going to be refuting Dan's speech. His claim was that violence in media and video games has zero effect on causation of crime in society. So I just want to emphasize the zero effect. So he had two claims. The first one was that violent crimes covered in media have zero impact on the causation of crime in society. The second one was that it has there's zero correlation between crime and video games popularity. So my response to the first claim, which was that violent crimes found in media and video games do affect the crime, is that that has zero effect on the crime in society, is to say that he uses news as media in his speech. So I also wanted to use news as media. So I just wanted to talk about Rodney King, which is, if you guys don't know, he was beaten by LAPD officers after he led the police on a high-speed chase through the Los Angeles County. George Holliday was actually the person who videotaped the beating that happened from his apartment balcony. The video shows that King is actually struck by the police batons more than 50 times, and there was over 20 officers there that were present that were mostly from the LAPD office. He suffered 11 fractures, injuries due to the beating. So this video was first given to KTLA, and they broadcasted it, and then people were able to watch it. It was a violent thing that happened, and it really affected many people, the society. On April 29th of 1992, they went to the trial jury. It ended, and they let go of the 4 officers. People were enraged because of this, and the Rodney King riots was the outcome of all of these events that were broadcasted by the news. So just a little research, the Virginia Tech Research Division showed students, several students, clips of violent activities, and the results indicated that violent clips, violent films, they increase hostile behavior. So something that I do want to point out that he said in his speech is that he recognizes that the news media is a sort of trigger, or I think he uses catalyst, to crime, but it's not the actual thing. I agree, but to say that it has zero effect it would be just to agree with that. So I don't say that it's the cause because it's not the main factor, but I do say it's a factor, therefore it should take some blame. His second argument was that there's zero correlation between crime and video games. So there was a study by the Indiana University School of Medicine which examined young men and violent media exposures that they had when they played a violent video game. There were visible alterations in the MRI scans that were done to their brains after playing 1 week of violent video games. There was a significant decrease in the activation of the prefrontal portion of the brain and a greater activation of the amygdala. So the prefrontal part of your brain is the control center. You think the thinking part of the brain which deals with concentration, decision making, self-control, and the amygdala is part of the limbic system. So it's called the emotional center. So it serves for emotional functions such as depression, anger, aggression, and it's that part that was it increased in activity. So there is a correlation between crime and video games, just because there's 2 testimonies, 2 teenagers from Tennessee who shot and killed a driver. They admitted to the police that they got the idea from playing Grand Theft Auto 3. Anders Breivik, who killed 77 people in Norway in 2011, he admitted to using the game Modern Warfare 2 for training. So clearly the games didn't make them do the crime, but I would say that they have a factor, and it does affect people, it does affect society and the crimes that happen. And that's my speech.
All right, the structural stuff is fine at the beginning. I think you've got a good example on the first point, talking about how things covered in the media can be catalysts for crime, and I think that you ought to point out that these there were significant acts of violence that are associated with the riots around the Rodney King trial and decision. I think that there are ways to suggest that the media plays a part in this process. I'm kind of surprised that you didn't talk about the way the media sometimes refers to these sorts of things themselves, that it would be irresponsible of us to show particular kinds of things, or that they go ahead and show these things anyway. You do kind of, like I said, put a qualifier on the claim right before you leave it, and I appreciate the idea that you're trying to be accurate and honest, but the argument that the advocate is presenting says the same thing. I think what you might want to argue is that this really is a moot point, that everybody acknowledges that there is some impact. There might be a dispute about how much impact there is, but the one thing that we definitely know is it's not zero impact, and that's what the advocate's claim was. So by that standard, it's not an accurate statement. And that's kind of what you're saying. I just think it needs to be focused a bit more on that point. On the second point, I like the the study that you go at, talking about the effect on the brain activity with people playing the video games. That's pretty reasonable. You've got an example of teens who claim to have been inspired by Grand Theft Auto, and you've got a good example of somebody who committed a mass killing using the games as training. And once again, you're at the same point. You're saying, I'm not making the claim that video game violence causes violence in society, but to say it has no impact ignores very real evidence that exists here, and we're back at the same standard. The advocate overclaimed his position, and there's good reason to believe that it does have some impact, and I think that that's the way you want to finish that argument. All right, thank you.